behind the scenes of NDP, we have free Mr. Bean. Well, an ice cream. Just some of the minor perks here every Saturday. I'm aware I missed out on the vlog last week. I apologize. So this is what we've been busy on, and once that is over, after the 9th of August, I promise you the vlogs will be a lot more interesting after that. Yeah, there's just a lot of things within the show that I can't shoot. Yeah. Today's vlog is something like an editing tutorial. This is how I edit my vlogs every week. Bearing in mind that different editors have different ways of handling assets and files, this is the way that I handle it. You can learn from it, or you can modify the way that that being said, today's vlog is going to be quite technical. If you're not into watching tutorials on how to edit, do not watch. Just go to some other video. Tune in next week. But for the rest of you who are interested in looking at how I edit my vlogs, this is how it goes. Alright, so here we go. So first things first, what you got to do is to import all the images and videos that you have from your, in my case, the GoPro and my iPhone primarily. What I do is I go to the Max image capture. For the iPhone at least, I just import every single video that I capture from the week before. So I have a main dump out folder on my desktop where I dump out every single thing there, and then I categorize it from there on. Right now what you see is a folder on my desktop where I import all the GoPro footages to. The GoPro is the main camera that I shoot out of. I have all my files on an external hard drive, purely just, in fact mostly just for my vlogs. Here you see the 2015 one and the 2016 ones. This folder is the vlog that I did last week, number 053. So if you realize, I number every single one of my vlogs and then I name them according to the title that I give it on YouTube itself. So to start off, I create a new folder. I have 3 main folders that I create inside, one for rushes, and then inside the rushes folder itself, I have a couple of other folders, the main one being clips. And then I transfer all the GoPro footages that I have, whether is it from GoPro or me iPhone or the 5D, I will dump it into the clips folder. Right, so after that is done, you do realize that each of the devices have their own individual naming convention. The GoPro starts with GO, the iPhone one starts with I. What I do to solve that problem is I create a script with Automator. I'm using a Mac, so I'm not sure if there's a Windows equivalent on this. I use a Automator script. Let me just show you what is inside the script itself. I basically add the time and date into the file as a prefix. So I go by hour, second, hour, minute, and second, right? So that is on the second part of the prefix. The first part of the prefix is year, month, and date. But you see the sequence when I put it like this. So after the renaming of the files, you will realize that the file name will appear at the end. It will start off with year, month, date, underscore, hour, minute, second. Once you have all that as the file names, given that your GoPro, iPhone, and all your recording devices are in sync in terms of time, every single one of the clips will appear in chronological order. So that is how that is the method that I use to sync up all the clips in terms of chronological timing, because sometimes I shoot with the GoPro, then I immediately switch to an iPhone for the slow-mo, and then I come back to the GoPro again, and I don't want to miss out on stuff, because once I come into the edit after the shoot itself, I tend to forget what I record in the first place. So if there are additional stuff that I shoot outside from the normal clips, for example drones, I create a new folder just for drones, because the drone footages need not be timed in chronological order with the rest of the clips. I know that those drone clips I know exactly when I shot them. I will create a separate folder for them, and I only dump in the ones that I choose from the rushes that I have shot with the drone itself. Right, so for this case, this vlog doesn't have any drone clips, so I'm just going to delete that folder. I have a second folder which I call assets. So I'll copy the assets folder from the week before. I'll rename it with the current vlog numbering. Inside the assets folder itself, you'll see more subfolders. You have the intro. The intro is where I have the vlog ident, and then I have 3 other title files. And then I have the outro folder, where these are the 2 files that I use to end the vlog with, one with color, one without, and then I just alternate them. And I have graphics folder. This is where all the individual graphic files come in. They are all done in Photoshop. Some of them are screenshots. In every folder, there is a minimum of 2 files, so that when you import into Premiere at a later time, the folder doesn't go missing. Because if you have 1 file inside the folder itself, the folder does not reflect in Premiere during import. Right, then this file is the previous week's vlog according to the individual folder. What I do is that I copy the export of the previous week and I copy it back in. Here you also have the music folder. These are the bunch of royalty-free background music that I use. And then you have the sound effects folder as well. This is an ever-growing list of sound effects. So when I have new sound effects, it goes in. When I copy it to the next week's vlog, it carries on from there. What you realize with this setup is that each and every single vlog folder is self-contained. Everything that is needed for the edit, including the rushes, the edits, the audio files, are all within one folder. So if I do need to separate it out or copy it out to another hard drive or to back up onto a server, all I need to do is to copy out the folder. I do not need to be worried about delinking files or files that go offline. And then the third folder I have is the week's exports. So only after I edited the entire sequence of the vlog do I export it into that folder. So when I upload it to YouTube, this is the file that I use. So what you realize is that if I go to every single folder of each and every episode of the vlog, you realize that they are all self-contained. They all have the same structure. They have the rushes, they have the assets, and they have the exports. Every single file is in there. No file that is used within the project is sitting somewhere else on the folder. As an editor, it's very important to know where each asset of your project is. The simplest way to do it, for me at least, is to have them all within the main project folder. Right, so what I do have here also in the root folder is a main music folder. This folder contains every single track, every single background music track that I've ever used in all my vlogs since day one. There have been questions from a lot of people as to where I get all this music from. Let me just give you a couple of hints. There are a couple of websites where you can buy music from, which are royalty free and you can use in your YouTube video. One of them is musicbit.com. Just bear in mind, this is not a paid advertisement. They do have some good music from different genres depending on how you want to edit your vlog. There is also another website called audiojungle.net. They have a bunch more stuff, which includes sound effects, stingers, but bearing in mind these are all paid. That YouTube also has an audio library for creators where you can download them for free and use them in your music. Some of them do require you to credit them in the description portion of your video. Yep, so that is where I get all my audio from. For me, I edit on Adobe's Premiere Pro CC. This is a pretty high-end editing software. It is paid. This does not necessarily mean that without Premiere Pro you can't edit a vlog or a video for that matter. Back when I started editing videos, I started on iMovie, which is a free software from Apple that you can get for your computer. I bet there is a similar version of it on Windows. The key thing to remember is that it doesn't matter which program you use. It matters how you use it. So after launching Premiere Pro, what I do is I create a new project which nests inside the main vlog folder itself. Right? How I name the projects is by date. So I have year, month, date, followed by the vlog episode number. In this case, it will be RN Roger Ng 054. When I edit on one file and I'm done with the edit for the day, that file remains as is. If I make changes to the edit, I always create a duplicate of the file. Having subsequent edit files by the date also lets you roll back and see at which date which change were made to the file, to the project itself. All the rest of the settings of the new projects, I have my scratch disk and previews and autosaves all within the same project folder. Right, so moving on, I start off by going to the assembly workspace. Workspace is Premiere Pro's way of laying out the different panels on the monitor that you have. At this point, I'm running a dual screen setup on a Mac Pro. Up to this point, I'm only using one screen for the ingest. So what I do is that I import the rushes and the assets. Okay, so after the import into Premiere Pro itself, what I do is I categorize it by name, and then you realize that whatever naming convention that was done before, if you remember, I had it named in year, month, date, underscore, hour, minute, second, followed by the file name. Once you have everything sorted out by file, everything that you see, you realize that everything you see in the clips folder or the rushes folder is all in chronological order. That makes it a lot easier to choose files, because most of the vlogs that I edit are all in chronological order by day. That makes life a lot easier if you think about it. So what you can see here is that even though I have a music folder in the file list, but because it has only one file inside, the folder disappears. Only the file remains. That is not the way that I like to run it. I like to have it with the folder itself, so that as I'm editing the vlog, I might have a new track coming in. I will want it in the folder in Premiere itself, so at least I have everything categorized properly. So with regards to that, I always have at least two files in at least two of the more used files inside the folder itself. In this case, I have two soundtracks here inside music, and then I drag the music folder into Premiere itself, and it will keep the folder's integrity. Right, so after that, I'll create a new sequence. The sequence settings that I use are ProRes proxies. I edit all my vlogs in 1080p HD. At some point, I did explore editing in 4K, but I kind of did away with that because number one, I didn't really have a 4K camera. The GoPro is 4K, yes, but it is not a true 4K camera in a sense where, because the sensor is so small, the validity of that 4K resolution is questionable. So I edit all my vlogs in HD. I name the sequence with the vlog naming itself. After which, I go into the timeline. I will move the timeline cursor to the 1 second mark. The way I edit my videos, I always leave at least 1 second black in front for any purpose, whether it's a pre-roll or on YouTube when you launch the video, it doesn't flick straight into the video. It gives it a little bit of breathing room. 1 second is not a lot, but it helps with the viewer process. For this week, it seems I will just put the ident in. You realize my idents have many markers on it. Those markers have been preset from previous vlog episodes, so I know exactly when, according to music and visuals, that each of these three titles will come in. These three titles change every week, so in terms of numbering, the vlog numbering will go up, the week numberings will go up as well. For obvious reasons, my name does stay the same. Right, so along the way, my ident had changed its music. If you realize, previously my ident was using a different form of music, rollerblades. Now I use Newsroom, and on the audio files itself, I do also put the marker so I know exactly when the music is supposed to start in accordance with the visuals. Right, we will do the music part of it later. Usually how I edit my vlogs is I do all the visuals first, and then I do all the music and sound. What you will see is that I'm using the Photoshop files and I sync up to the markers. These are all pre-planned, and this is the sequence that I've always been working with. I will cut each of the unused portion out so that when I play it back, you will see that each of them sync up with the visuals itself. Now, moving on from there, that is where all the clips, all the individual clips will come into the timeline depending on how I want to edit. I will choose a clip that I want to put into the timeline, or a clip that I want to start it off with. For example, this one. Usually I play through or I scrub through all the individual clips so that I have the most exciting part of the clip in the timeline. I don't put every single recorded footage inside. That defeats the entire purpose of editing. So if you see here, I put an in point at where I think the exciting parts of this clip is. I press I for in, and then I press O for out. So that entire segment right now is about 16 seconds. It is a tad long, but it's fine. I will do the trimming later. Once I have the in and out point of each individual clip that I want to put in, I will press the comma button. That is a shortcut key for placing the clip at where the timeline is. So even after the clip is in the timeline itself, you realize that for this clip, 16 seconds is a little bit long for a clip like this. It drags the viewer's attention. Viewers tend to lose attention span on a YouTube video faster than they do on any other video. So what you want to have is the most interesting essence of it. Like in this case, I'm cutting out the end point of the video because it just spins off. What I do is I will scrub back to the point where I want it cut, and then I will press W. W will cut off the clip at where the timeline is. It's something like a new out point, if you want to put it that way. That's one way to edit your files. And then from there, I move on to the next clip. I will play through the clip, choose the most exciting parts. For this, maybe I'll put it in right there, and then out point there, and I'll just insert it into the footage itself. So the workflow is pretty much the same. There's an in point, there's an out point, you put it into the clip, you fine tune it to such a way where you only have the most interesting parts of the footage in the timeline that keeps the viewer's interest. Moving on to this other example clip that I want to put in, sometimes I have long recording clips of, let's say in this case, of me getting ready to go to work. I don't put the entire clip in. It is extremely boring. So choosing the very important parts, the more exciting parts of the video, to bring out the essence of what you want to tell your viewers. In this case, it's me wearing my shirt, me having a shave, and then it's just very quick cuts. It lasts for like a second or two, or maybe 3 seconds at most. You in and out it, and then you put it into the timeline. It works from there. So now I have 3 different segments from one single clip. Sometimes I let the camera swing run its course, so it kind of gives the illusion of a transition into another part of the day. So those are very simple examples of how I choose the footage to put into my vlog. Right now, I'm just going to go through every other clip and I will just slot it in accordingly. So the time lapse goes now. Right, so after I'm done with all the initial insertion of the clips into the timeline, what I will do is go into the editing mode. The assembly workspace is the one that I use to do the initial insertion of all the clips. And then after that, I go into the editing workspace. This is the Premiere Pro's default editing workspace. I don't use this workspace. I have a custom workspace that I use. I have this as a dual screen setup. So right here you will see the dual screen setup. This is how I set up my editing. I have the clips on one corner of the window, I have the source, and then I have the timeline as spread out as it can be so that I can see as much of the timeline as I want to. And then I use my secondary display as the timeline program that is how I can see the image in its entirety, in its full resolution, or as close to full resolution as possible. So after the initial insertion of the clips, what I move on from there is to do the titles and the audio. So I go back into the Finder, I go and open the Photoshop file. In this case is the second and third file of the titles. That is what displays the week number as well as the vlog number itself. So once I open in Photoshop, you see I just change the numbering. It's just +1. It's a pretty simple thing. Same goes for the vlog numbering. Once I save that, I go back into Premiere. You will notice that the files in the timeline itself have already been updated. So after which I will play through the sequence just to have a good feel of how the entire thing plays out. What I do at this point is also to insert the audio. This is the audio that I use for my intro. I just drag it down into the timeline. The in point at this, because of the marker allocations, the in point will definitely sync with the out point of it. What you will also want to do is to have proper audio levels. In any video edit, as much as the visuals are important, the sound is extremely important as well. So you want to remember to have correct audio levels. So what you see here on the side are audio meters. The audio from a lot of soundtracks tend to normalize around 0. What I try to do is to bring it down to -6 dB. I use -6 dB as a reference level for all the audio inside my vlogs. That gives it enough headroom so that it doesn't crack if it goes above 0 for that matter. So I click on the audio file, I press the shortcut G, that brings up the gain settings of the file, and I set it to -6, and the rest of the audio is all at -6 as well. After this, I go through every single clip throughout the timeline. What I'm doing here is, as much as I'm trimming down the unnecessary portions of the visuals, I am also bringing up or adjusting the audio levels of all the speech that I have in the video to -6 as well. The way that I edit vlogs are very simple. When there is a speech, there is usually no music. When there's music, there's usually no speech. There's lesser of a mix of music and speech in my vlog. So what I'm doing here is that usually I keep one of the soundtrack for, in this case is Newsroom. I use the Newsroom soundtrack just for the intro. I have the intro lead in a little bit into the visuals itself. Once the first audio line comes in, I cut that audio. I cut the music soundtrack. I have let the speech take over, and then when I go into the rest of the vlog, I usually have a new soundtrack to ride the rest of the way. So here what I do, this is the next point of the speech that I have in my video. What I will do is I will cut off the music soundtrack at this point. I'll separate it, and then I will normalize the speech of it to -6. So when you're listening it in YouTube or when you're watching it on YouTube, you don't hear a major difference between the soundtrack and the speech, or at least you shouldn't hear that big of a change. So here you see in the timeline that the visual has a slightly different color tag to it. The blue ones are the normal, the ones that are in Full HD with audio track to it. The ones in purple are the ones from a time lapse. The way that I have been recording time lapse on my GoPro is that I've been recording them in 4K on the GoPro, so that gives me a little bit of latitude to punch in a little bit and still maintain resolutions since the export is only 1080. So from here on, you'll see a time lapse of me just editing the clips, trimming out the unimportant stuff, closing up gaps, adjusting audio levels, and inserting graphics. So So after I'm done with all the editing, then it comes to the point where I need to insert the end slit. The end slit, how I do it is that I have both clips into the timeline. What I have them is at 10 frames long, so total per cycle of the colored and non-colored versions of the slit is 20 frames. And then after that, I will just duplicate them along the timeline to the length of the outro that I want it to be. The outro, you realize that I also have music accompanying it. I have the titles accompanying it, and then more recently I've been putting time lapses or a short video as a background, and then on top of that will be the slit. On top of that will be the past week's clip. So what I do with the past week clips is that I select the more exciting parts of it. These are very random. They don't need to be very specific. I just cut it out. They are very fast paced, and they just give you an idea of what you might view in the vlogs before if you were to click on it. It's sort of like a call to action button, so it entices the viewers to click on the button to continue watching vlogs within my channel. I will put them in the timeline, delete the audio, and then after that I will put it on top of the outro section. What I will do is that I will choose one of the clips, put it at 30% of the scale, and then I will position it in such a way that it is at one corner of the vlog. So I have it set at that corner. I will just copy the settings and paste it to the rest of the clips. So when I play back the entire thing, it should just work out just fine. So this is the look that I've chosen for the end of my vlog, and that's how I do it. Right, so that's the end of my editing sequence. What I do is I will zoom out everything, just have a good view of what the entire timeline looks like. Just make sure that I don't have any missing gaps. And then what I will also do is to play everything back from the start, watch it once through with the mentality of a third-person viewer, just to see that everything runs out fine, there are no missing tracks, the audio is not too loud, the graphics turn out fine, there's no typos, etc, etc. Yep. And then sometimes when I do have the time, I'll go back to every single clip, bearing in mind that I'm shooting on a GoPro, which for the large portion of it does have some automation to does have some automated features to the look that the images produce. So I go through every single clip. The clips from the GoPro tend to be a little bit desaturated, so I tend to bump it up by another 20%. I put in a Lumetri color preset into the clips, and then I bump it up from there. The saturation and exposure settings for each individual clip also varies from piece to piece. So this is just a run through of the look of the video. Right, so after I'm done with everything, I'll go back to reverting to one screen, just so that I have the other screen to look at all my files in Finder. This is where I export the timeline. I click on Export, Media, and then you have this pop-up settings here. I export in these formats for H.264. There is a preset in there for YouTube, which works fine by me. You also realize that one of the settings I check on the box, use maximum render quality, as well as time interpolation. I set it to frame blending instead. This happens in such a way where if I do quicken up some of the videos, you give a very blur look and a better sense of motion to time lapses when you quicken them up in the timeline itself. After which I just click on export, and it's pretty much done. Each export doesn't take too long. If it's about a 10-minute clip, it takes about slightly less than 10 minutes to export the whole thing. And yeah, and it works just well from there. So that's that on vlog editing or video editing for that matter. It wasn't too in-depth, but I'm hoping that for new editors who are watching this, it should be enough information to get you off the ground. Bearing in mind that Premiere Pro is not the only editing software out there, there are many free editing softwares. iMovie is a good place to start. Yeah, this vlog editing workflow that I have is primarily built around speed. The vlog edit that you just saw took somewhere about 3 to 4 hours to edit. That is the average time it takes every week for me to edit each and every single episode. So speed is extremely crucial in the workflow that I have for this. Also, another thing to note is that I never learned any of this from school. Back when I was in school, Premiere wasn't even as advanced as this. Premiere was at version 2 or something. Wasn't a lot to learn. I didn't really learn a lot of editing back in school. A lot of the things that I've been learning and applying in my own workflow are based on my own personal experiences, as well as what I learned out of the program and what to make the best out of it. But if you're going to ask the question on how to be a better editor, the only answer I can give you is to just practice, to just shoot something, put it in the timeline, and work around with it until the thing breaks. I mean, that's the only way that people get good at something. The way how good I have been getting at my vlogs is constantly editing every single week. These tips and tricks that I have been sharing with you in the vlog are from many years of experience in editing. They are also based on many problems and incidences that I have with footages and editing programs. So yeah, how does anybody get good at anything? Just keep practicing the same thing that you always do, and you'll eventually get good at it. So I hope this was useful for you, and there are many tips and tricks that you can take out of this and apply in your own editing process. Or if you are someone who is looking to jump onto the bandwagon of video making, I hope that this tutorial was comprehensive enough to get you off the ground, to get you to edit your first video. And yeah, if you do, send me a link. I would love to see it. If not, that's it. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.